there's nothing in terms of energy that has improved over the last 100 years. Prices have increased dramatically recently, and surely the whole point of education and having schools and universities and support for these institutions and technological centers is to simply be able to produce cheaper energy.
Mm.
Therefore, because here's, it's almost like a conspiracy, right? It's almost like a conspiracy because the more expensive energy is, the more you have to work because you got to pay for it, right? So you got to do the more energy you use, and we're all constantly using more energy, and the introduction of electric cars is another example of that. I did basically it still costs more energy to run a computer than it does to produce pen and paper, right? Um, or you could argue the same amount. That computers haven't reduced our energy consumption. They've just made it more invisible, but it's still there, and it's not getting any better or any easier for anybody. In fact, it's just making people poorer, and that's
Mm.
not that's not a good thing in general. I'll tell you a little story. It's not really connected to that, but uh, now if you have a house, and this is like an old area, so if you have a house that is 100 years old,
Uh-huh.
probably just over 100, just go back to 120 years old, okay? The houses that are 120, now you can imagine 120 years is a long time, right? And not many things last 120 years, okay?
Mm.
Not many things at all. You got a couple of classical big old buildings, a couple of animals, turtles, trees, okay, trees in nature. So not many things last 120 years. Okay, um, so there are houses with these little like iron. It's like I don't know what it is. It's like a decorative design above the windows. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And this is on houses. You can see them on very old houses in this village, in the next village. And if you go to the local town and you go to the old areas of the local town, now used to be an old cathedral town before the wars of 200, 300 years ago, and everything got burnt to the ground, and everybody died. Um, and if you go and look at the old houses that are 120 to 150 years old, all of them have these all of them have these little iron designs on top of the windows. And me being me was looking into history and like wondering what the hell is this? Because it's just what a strange thing to have, and seeing them around. Um, Discovered that they're actually ether collectors, and that, believe it or not, 150 years ago, all energy was free and collected from the air.
Mm.
And most, if not all, homes ran electrical devices from these antennae. Basically, it's like it similar to what we have like for receiving
Yeah, I
television
know.
and
Yes.
aerial. Okay, now I thought this was stupid and crazy when I first learned about this. But I then traveled around. Walked around this village and the next village, and I found the old houses, and all the old houses had this on it. And I thought that's really weird. And then I went to the next town and I looked at all the old buildings in the old town, and they all had it as well. And then I spoke to some people who lived in those houses, and I I said, "Oh, you've got those nice little designs above the window. What is that?" And they said, "Oh, we don't know. Nobody knows. It's all lost in history. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Oh, we don't know what it is." And they've all got it. There's like a whole row of old houses, like Victorian houses, and they've all got this above the windows. And it's big, it's huge.
Mm.
And nothing exists for no reason. Okay? There's a reason for everything, right? There's not anything in the world that exists that doesn't have a reason. There's a reason for absolutely everything. So why do all these houses have these things? And so, so I spoke, this is like a year ago, I spoke to somebody who lived in one of these. I was actually parking my car on a street in the local town, and some people were coming out of the house, the big old Victorian house. And I said, hi, excuse me, you see those things? What? Because I'm me, right? I'm always like, I'll talk to anybody about anything. And I said, do you know what they are? And he said, no. And I talked to them about this idea about history and the collection of energy. And the person said, I went and looked, and under these iron decorative features, there are actually cables in the houses that link all the rooms together. And these cables were put in 150 years ago, right? And either these antennas were able to collect energy directly from the air and turn it into electricity, or, get this, there was a local church that had at the top of the church a very, very large collector, which modern people call lightning rods. Modern people say, oh, there's a big metal piece at the top of the church because in case there's lightning, it'll strike there and protect the building. It's rubbish. It's not true. It's complete bullshit, right? Whatever, you go read about it. It is complete nonsense. So what happened was that the energy was collected in the church and either sent to the homes through the air, or you took a little battery. Batteries existed all throughout history. They're not new inventions. Batteries existed hundreds, thousands of years ago, right? They're not new inventions. You took your battery to the church and you plugged it into the altar, the table at the front of the church, which was an alternator, which generated energy and put it into your battery, and you took it home and you powered all your electrical devices at home. And electricity was free up to about 150 years ago for everybody, all over the world, not just in Britain, but in every country. And if you look back in, I've read stories about people went to church not to pray to God, but to charge their batteries for their homes. That's what churches were originally. Churches were charging stations for the collection of electricity. They were not religious centers. And around 200 years ago, there was a social, cultural, you could say religious revolution, and all the churches were taken over in different countries by the different religions, and these religions replaced the collection of energy with the worship of God. And you can go back and check it all, and there's a lot of writing and a lot of books about it. It's not black and white. There's a gray area in the middle of a lot of different things happening, but that's the reason for the destruction of all the cathedrals. The reason why all the cathedrals were destroyed was control of energy. It was nothing to do with religion, because the cathedrals were large energy collection centers. They were giant batteries that were used to charge environments. And what happened was they collected energy from the air. The energy was taken down into channels of water, I believe, and then transferred through water to different areas, to different canals. And today you can walk around here and you can still see, there's one like 200 meters from where I am. There's an old building, and it's got these little energy collectors still on top of the building. And it's lost history because we had 2 world wars, right? And in the world wars, everything was destroyed. Everything. Whole cities were just completely flattened. Dresden, Germany was completely destroyed. London was flattened, right? And what happened with that was, and a lot of the places that were attacked were historical sites, museums, libraries, cathedrals, anything that pointed to architectural history, whatever. And if you take the design of a battery or design of a circuit from a battery, and you look at a cathedral or a mosque, you will find that the designs are almost exactly the same. Yeah, the structure. Churches were functioning like giant batteries, and the conspiracy element of everything I've told you is a fact, right? The conspiracy element of it is that power and energy is control. You control the energy, you control the people, and for as long as people require energy and have to pay for it, they will always work and they will always be they'll always be busy doing a lot of things for the system. But if you search ether collectors, you should be able to find some information about that on buildings. And they were usually on top, and you'll find them on top of the windows. For some reason, they were placed on top of the windows, and the energy would come down into the buildings. And there's old electrical circuits in buildings today. And here's the thing, right? All the buildings had it, right?
Mm.
During the Second World War, I'm not sure about the First World War because I don't know everything. During the Second World War, the British government passed legislation. They passed a law that all iron features of houses were to be removed during the Second World War. They passed a law. Number one, are we making anything easier or are we just making everything more complicated? Now, that's got two answers in itself. First of all, you can say that, well, we have air travel. We can fly a plane from, London to New York in 3 hours. That's progress. That's progress, right?
Yes.
So you can argue that, but look at the energy prices in the last 2-3 years. Is that progress? No, it's just created a big problem for every single person on the planet. Is writing a email on a computer better than writing a letter? Yes, in my opinion, because what used to take a week now takes 5 seconds, right? And speed means you can get more things done. But are you personally less busy than you were 5 years ago, or more busy than you were 5 years ago, or is it the same? And it's a trap. It's a trap because if you say you're less busy, then your company is like, oh, that's not right. You should be doing more work because you got more time to do more stuff, right? So it's a trap, right? If the more efficient and effective we become, very often the busier we get. It doesn't negate the problems and things we have to deal with in life. So there's there's that issue. So that's part of that. That's one side of it. Are things better or worse? And I would argue in general that I think that open Western economies and semi-democratic societies and free market economies have lifted people out of poverty over the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and it's been good for society. So I would argue that there's a lot of examples of progress there. But if you look at things in terms of energy production and consumption, the first electric car was 1830.
Okay.
And it's in a museum in Aberdeen, just like 50 miles from here. You can go and see it, right? So why did we stop using electric cars? 1900. Why did we stop it? So energy is not at all what we think it is. Now me being religious and me being a Christian, I still have to be open to other possibilities. Maybe I think we all have to be open to the road that we're on might not be the right road. We all have to be open to that possibility. It's just one of those things. Keep an open mind in life, and it's not an easy thing to learn that perhaps your religion is responsible for the destruction of a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
For the destroying of a lot of history. That cathedrals were charging stations, basically, for local energy distribution, and that's why most of them were burnt down. They weren't burnt down for religious reasons. They were burnt down because if you had no energy, you couldn't build anything. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't communicate. And that's why 300 to 400 years ago, for one reason or another, I don't know why exactly, but the British government sent armed forces around the country burning down all the cathedrals. It wasn't because people were worshipping God. It was because the cathedrals were supplying energy to the people. And that if the people didn't have energy, then they couldn't fight back against the government. And strange but true. History's lost. People can't remember last week. People can't remember they can't remember last week. They can't remember last month. Last year is, it's a joke. Why last year? I mean, last year's dead. Dead time. It's gone. It's done. It's finished. Doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it matters because it got us here, but can't change it. So it's done. It's dusted. It's finished. It's gone. It's irrelevant. And we kind of have to live in today for the benefit of tomorrow. But we and history's also written by the winners. Okay? If there's a war between me and you, and I win, I write the history books, right? And nobody knows you existed. You get erased from history, or I make you out to be the bad man. Okay? Because I'm good, I won, and because you lost, you're bad, and I'm sorry, but I win. Right? That's the way history is written. History is written by the winners, and a lot of information is just lost. Luckily, we live in the information age. Imagine living in the 1970s and trying to get any information about anything at all. You had to walk to the library. You had to look for a book. And if the book wasn't in the library, well, that was it, right? How else did you learn it? How else did you learn anything at all? Maybe you spoke to somebody. Maybe somebody else read a book and they told you something. But we were extremely limited in our capacity and our ability to observe and understand and collect and collate data and information. Also knowing that not all information is true as well. Not all information is true. As an example of this, don't just look at newspapers and media, but look at how much media is created that's not real. Films, right? Films, they're not real. It's a lovely, wonderful work of art. I love the time and attention and detail and entertainment value of it all. Absolutely fantastic. But it's not anything real. It's not reality. Occasionally, from time to time, films try to depict or document some element of reality, but it's always fantasy. At the end of the day, it's always fantasy. Yeah, and how many of the books in a bookshop are about reality and fantasy? We got fact and fiction, right? A lot of books are fiction. They're not. It's not real. Not real stories. Not real people. And even the facts are, they're written by the winners. So, I won, and so I'm right. because that's the way we are with human ego in terms of personalities. You see it with the look at boxing, right? Boxing. I'm the best, or MMA fighting, or whatever. It's human ego. I won because I'm the best. Yeah, and we haven't progressed psychologically very far beyond that point. And so the last 100 years has seen history just completely wiped. Completely, it's if you type into Google the Great Fire of, and you write any city, London, Paris, Philadelphia, Adelaide, Canberra, whatever, any city in the world, you will find in the last 200 to 300 years, there was a fire that burned the whole city to the ground. Everything just gone. And that's every city in the world. So in the last 300 years, every city has just been completely flattened and rebuilt. And this is the history of the human race, where we have chaos and destruction, and then we rebuild with a new kind of order. It's Iraq, Syria, Libya, the Ukraine, and just anywhere in Central South America, right? We're just flattening the world, the rainforests. I should burn them all to the ground. That's human history. And part of what is lost in that is a lot of knowledge and understanding. Imagine, okay, just take a little bit of this. Imagine that the Bible didn't exist. Now, why do that? Why imagine the Bible didn't exist? Two reasons. First of all, it was very close to not existing, right? All the writers were killed. Almost all the writers of all the books in the Bible were murdered, right? So the writers of the New Testament were all suffered horrible deaths, right? They were all, crucified and nailed to crosses and had bits of their body cut off, and horrible things happened to them, right? So it's very, very close to not existing at all, that information. It's very, very close. In fact, people who translated the Bible into English were killed for hundreds of years. Anybody who translated it was killed. They were hunted down, and armies went out to kill these people. So that the fact that the Bible exists as a translation into English is an absolute miracle. And the Bible is the basis for truth in Western society. If there's no Bible, there's no truth. If you want to understand psychophilosophically, culturally, religiously how Western civilization was built, it was built on the basis of truth based on biblical teachings. And if the Bible didn't exist, there'd be no truth, and we wouldn't have anything at all. There'd be nothing. That one thing changes everything. And that's just one example of one thing that has survived. Many things have not survived. A lot of knowledge. Where are the modern cathedrals? Where are they? If we built these cathedrals 300 to 400 years ago, my studies suggest that they're much older than that, but where are they now? If we could build these fantastic, wonderful works of art, beautifully decorative, full of majesty and perfection, full of perfection, buildings are perfect. Where are they today? Is this progress? Has modern, postmodernist cultural Marxism improved our world? Look at modern buildings. They're functional, but they're ugly, right? They are. They're functional, but they're ugly. Sad but true. Ugly things exist. Beautiful things exist, and ugly things exist. There are nice cars and there are ugly cars. There things that are nice to look at and the things that are not nice to look at. It's just the way of the world. So we've lost a lot, and we've lost more than we've discovered. And people, if the Bible didn't exist, there'd be no memory of history. If the Bible didn't exist, there'd be no memory of history. Nothing at all. There'd be no Easter. There'd be no Christmas. There'd be no truth. There'd be no morality. There'd be nothing. We just live in an empty void of space-time with no direction in our lives. If that didn't exist, it's extremely important. And that's just one element of something we've saved. What about all the things we've lost? What about all the great books written that we don't know about? Why do armies always destroy museums first? Have you noticed? Like, that's the first thing they do. When they go into a city, they attack the museums and the libraries, government buildings and archives. That's what they go for. Government buildings and archives. They destroy the history completely. Every now and then, a little bit of history survives. We live in the information age where it's a little bit easier to share things where it's possible. And although we live in mad times at the same time. Anyway, so the question was about, what happened? Why are things not better? How did we lose this idea, lose this technology, lose this lose something that was perhaps better? It's hard to know all of the reasons. The Bible's got an explanation, but that's not for this conversation. That's for a different day. But the Bible explains why this happens. Well, here's another thing, right? The ancient British cities were all built in the shapes of stars. Okay, how to explain this? You know what a snowflake looks like? If you look a snowflake, like have you seen like scientists, like they magnify the picture of a snowflake, and it's like a beautiful symmetrical star. Yeah. Like one tiny little snowflake is the most beautiful thing that you've ever seen in your life, right? And people don't think about it because there's like millions of snowflakes falling, but each one is a tiny crystallized piece of water perfection. Yeah. And all the cities of Britain were built in that shape. They were all built like snowflakes 500 to 1,000 years ago. And they were all destroyed and the modern cities were built on top. And my friend's he's writing a book about it. It's really incredible that he's got maps of all the old cities and they all look like snowflakes. And all the modern cities just look like, right? No plan, no organization, everything put everywhere, no coordination. It's random madness. Yeah. But all the old cities had perfect designs. And if you want an example of this, look at Malta. Get any map of Malta and look at the island of Malta. Every part of the island of Malta was built like a snowflake. Every element, every town. Get it. Especially go to the new maps. Sort of look a bit everywhere, but get an old map like type in to Google Malta 200 years ago, Malta 300 years ago. Every city looked like a snowflake. Yeah. And you can still see elements of that today. And there's still some in the Middle East and around Turkey. And European cities as well were built like snowflakes, but they were all destroyed. They were all flattened to the ground and built on top of for some reason. And, who knows why. And if you look at where the world is heading, in some sense, we're trying to get back to those elements of beauty. We're trying to return to sustainable environments, which in theory is a really good thing. It's a really good thing to have the energy that you need available for everybody. And now, and here's the crazy thing. Okay, final point. Imagine if you didn't have to pay for energy, how different your life would be. How different your life would be. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely, because you work like everybody works to get money to pay bills so that you can live, right? Because we gotta, and we got fuel for the car and food for our bodies and, lights for the house and all the other things that we need in our lives. Energy to, if you're a company, energy to build factories and produce things and manufacture and on and on and on. Yeah, but I imagine that there'd be 25 to 50% less work if I think people would still work if they had free energy. I think they'd work on different things though.
Mm.
They'd work more on helping each other rather than fighting with each other because war is for resources and resources are the basis of energy. That's it. One country A attacks country B. Apart from government buildings and libraries, you want the energy sources destroyed first. Yeah, as well. They take out they take out the dams, they take out the power stations. That's also a reason why is a reason you could argue it's a good reason why we had nuclear power. There's the double side to nuclear power, but it you'd have to be completely insane to attack a nuclear power station because you'd kill everybody, and it's completely out of control. And so as a result, it was kind of relatively safe, unless you had complete psychos in charge of things. But it's an interesting part of history. Anyway, it's about energy. And if you control the energy, then you can limit what people can do. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everything was better in the past. I don't know. We had a lot of bad things. Industrial revolution hurt a lot of people. Child slavery was not a good thing, right? A lot of primitive elements to the past, but I don't think it was exactly what we were told. And as always, as something gets better, something gets worse. I think that there's two sides to everything. Yeah. So as I said, you can fly London to New York in 3 hours. Well, you could. Well, you can now. I mean, progress. The 1960s, you could fly London to New York in 3 hours. Today, you can't. So show me the progress in the last 70 years, huh? Show me that progress. The speed has not increased. It's decreased.
Mm.
It now takes 6, 7 hours if you want to fly. There's no Concorde. There's no supersonic travel. There's no progress there. Can electric cars travel further than diesel cars? No. Is it cheaper to produce electric cars than diesel cars? Or no, it's not. It's not cheaper. It's not cheaper at all. It's not in any way clear. I think both should exist side by side. Why can't you have two? Why can't you have two choices? Why can't you have Coke and Pepsi? Why not let people decide what they want? People who want to buy electric can buy electric. The people who want to buy diesel can buy diesel. Let's try to make the environment cleaner naturally. Let's clean everything up, but let's not kill ourselves to survive. That doesn't make any sense at all. So energy and resources. Why? Because energy is power. Energy companies are some of the most powerful companies in the world. The richest and most powerful, and more powerful all the time. More and more powerful all the time. And will continue to be. I would argue that I would argue that if we want the world to be a better place, the main aim of technology is to make things not just easier, but cheaper, more accessible. You want a crazy argument? I'll give you a crazy argument, right? How come we can get a vaccine to everybody on the planet, but we can't get clean water to everybody? That's completely insane. We can get a manufactured, produced chemical that's very expensive to every single person on the planet regularly, every 3 months. But we can't get clean, fresh water to everybody. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with the thinking of people that's a fact. And so, so some things I think in history are worth studying and worth learning about. And I have great respect for people who are working with the different technologies and trying to make things as, I don't know, as comfortable as possible for everybody. And so there we are. And having beauties of the modern world, the ability to have a pool in your garden, that's fantastic. Not just for you, but for your neighbors as well, right? It's a facility, and that's the power of the private person. The government could put a swimming pool in everybody's home if they wanted. They have limitless resources, but they don't want to do that. And besides, that might interfere with the economy, so maybe they shouldn't do that. But it'd be nice. Be a nice thing. Yeah. So and you can do that in that part of the world where you are. Nobody really wants a swimming pool in their garden here. It's just far too cold all the time. I guess that's what makes Scots people so hard, right? Is that they have to deal with those elements of things, right? But even in your part of the world, if you look at the buildings, you'll see old buildings. So it's always the old buildings that burn to the ground, not the new ones. It's always the old buildings that burn to the ground, not the new ones. Right, interesting. Repurposing, right? Those buildings that are churches were not churches originally. Those buildings that were schools were not schools originally. Those buildings where the kings and princes live, they weren't for kings and princes originally. They were kind of an entirely different purpose. Anyway, it's all lost history. Doesn't matter. The internet in this part of the world is still the speed that it was 10 years ago. Where's progress? Where's the progress? Huh? Where's the progress? This is zero progress. Zero. Zero. And it's more expensive. The speed is not faster, and it's relatively slower because more devices are connected to the internet. So it's actually slower and more expensive. There's no progress in that at all. None. It's backwards, completely backwards. Right.